The wind howled across the vast plains of Wyoming, kicking up clouds of dust and scattering tumbleweeds across the endless horizon. The only sound that broke the stillness was the rhythmic scraping of shovels against the earth. A small group of archaeologists worked diligently under the hot sun, their faces covered with hats and sunglasses, their hands calloused from days of digging. In the distance, jagged rock formations rose like silent sentinels, their rough surfaces telling tales of an ancient world. Dr. Emma Lane stood in the midst of the excavation site, sweat dripping down her brow as she carefully examined the ground beneath her. She had spent the last 6 months researching this area, combing through historical records and ancient maps. It was here, she believed, that they would find the key to unlocking a long-lost civilization, a civilization that had lived and thrived in these plains long before anyone had ever imagined. Emma was a passionate archaeologist, driven by the thrill of discovery. The history of ancient peoples fascinated her, their ingenuity, their art, and their tools. Every detail told a story of survival, culture, and evolution. She loved the feeling of unearthing something that hadn't been touched in thousands of years. And every find brought her one step closer to understanding the past. "Emma, over here," shouted Professor Jack Miller, her colleague and longtime friend, from a few meters away. He was holding something in his hand, a look of surprise on his face. Emma walked over quickly, her boots crunching the gravel as she neared Jack. He was crouched near a large rock, his fingers delicately brushing away the dirt from the object in his palm. At first glance, Emma thought it was just another small stone or piece of pottery, but then she saw it. A long, slender object, perfectly shaped and sharp at one end. It looked like a needle. No, not just any needle. A needle like no one had ever seen before. It was made of a dark, shiny material that reflected the sunlight in strange ways, and its edges were unnaturally smooth, as if it had been crafted with precise skill. "What is it?" Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jack shrugged, his skeptical expression still in place. "It looks like a tool of some kind, maybe for sewing or carving, but it doesn't make sense. The materials, the craftsmanship, it's unlike anything we've found before." Emma squinted at the object, then looked around at the rest of the team. "We need to dig deeper. If this is what I think it is, we could be looking at something far more significant." She signaled for the others to join them, and soon the team had gathered around, each one peering curiously at the small, needle-like object. One of the junior archaeologists, Sarah, examined it closely with a magnifying glass. "Professor Miller, Dr. Lane, you should see this," Sarah said, her voice filled with awe. "The material, it's not just any stone or bone. This looks like it was forged." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had worked with ancient tools before, bone needles, stone blades, clay fragments, but this was different. This was something advanced. "Jack, I need you to analyze it," Emma said, her voice steady but urgent. "We can't make assumptions without proper tests." Professor Miller hesitated, but then nodded. Fine. But don't get your hopes up, Emma. We've seen plenty of unusual objects in our time. This could just be a coincidence." Despite his words, Emma could tell that even Jack was intrigued. He may have been skeptical, but he was also a scientist, and a good one at that. If anyone could explain this strange object, it would be him. The team worked into the evening, carefully removing the surrounding earth and uncovering more of the needle-like objects. To Emma's astonishment, they uncovered not one, but several more, each one unique but identical in shape. They were small, just a few inches long, with sharp, delicate points and smooth surfaces. There were no markings or signs that could explain their purpose, but the pattern was undeniable. Emma's mind raced as she examined the objects. She had read about the ancient tools used by early humans, how they had fashioned needles for sewing and weaving from bone, ivory, and wood. But this was something else. These needles weren't made from any material that could be easily identified, and their precision suggested they had been crafted with a skill far beyond what she had expected from early humans. As the team packed up for the day, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something truly groundbreaking. The next morning, she called for a thorough analysis of the needles. She knew they needed more than just a superficial look. If these objects were as old as they appeared, they could rewrite history. As Jack walked toward the tents, he turned to her with a bemused smile. "You know, Emma, this could be a lot of nothing." Emma glanced at him, determination in her eyes. "Or it could be everything." And so, the mystery of the needles began, and the journey into the unknown had only just started. The days that followed were filled with anticipation and hard work. The team continued to excavate the site, carefully uncovering more of the mysterious needle-like objects. Emma, however, knew that the true significance of their discovery lay beyond the physical artifacts. She could sense that they were on the cusp of something much larger, something that could change their understanding of human history. Emma spent long hours poring over the needle-like objects, carefully documenting their size, shape, and material. She knew that the next step was to understand their origin, their purpose. What had these needles been used for, and who had made them? It was during one of these long nights that Emma made her breakthrough. She had been reviewing the cave paintings found nearby, works of art that were believed to date back thousands of years. The paintings, smeared in ochre and charcoal, depicted scenes of life from a forgotten civilization, figures working together in what appeared to be a community. In one image, a group of people sat around a fire, weaving what looked like cloth. But what caught Emma's eye were the figures holding tools that resembled the very needles they had uncovered. The images were crude but unmistakable. A person with a needle in hand, carefully sewing what seemed to be intricate patterns into fabric. "Jack!" Emma called out excitedly, rushing toward the professor's tent. Jack was sitting at a wooden desk, reviewing his notes with a skeptical frown. He didn't look up as she entered, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Jack," she repeated, her voice rising with excitement. "You need to see this." Jack sighed but stood up, following her out of the tent and into the dim light of the camp. "What's all the fuss about now, Emma?" "Look at this," Emma said, spreading out a large sheet of paper with a photograph of one of the cave paintings. Jack squinted at the image, his expression blank for a moment. Then his eyes widened slightly as he took a closer look. "Is that a needle?" he asked, pointing to the figure in the painting who held a long, slender object. Emma nodded. "Exactly. The same shape, the same design. And look at the cloth they're working with. Woven patterns, intricate and delicate. I believe these people use needles just like the ones we've found to make textiles." Jack leaned in closer, studying the painting carefully. He murmured, a note of skepticism still in his voice. "But how can we be sure? This could just be a coincidence. These paintings could represent anything, symbols, abstract ideas. It's a stretch to claim they're related to our needles." Emma's heart raced, but she tried to remain calm. "I don't think it's a coincidence, Jack. These needles are too advanced to be something that just happened by chance. They're not like anything we've seen from this period. And the people in the paintings, They're clearly engaged in some kind of textile production, just like we thought. Jack crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. I understand your excitement, Emma, but we need more than just paintings to prove this. We need hard evidence. We need to know who these people were, what their civilization was like. Emma nodded, knowing he was right. She had always believed that archaeology wasn't just about finding artifacts. It was about telling the story of a people, understanding their culture, their way of life. The paintings were a clue, but they couldn't stand alone. We'll keep digging, Emma said, determination in her voice. We'll find more evidence. We'll prove this is more than just a hoax. As the days passed, Emma and Jack's team worked tirelessly to uncover more of the ancient site. They found traces of what appeared to be workshops, areas where textiles had been woven and tools had been crafted. They also uncovered fragments of early fabric, charred remnants of what might have once been used in weaving. The evidence was mounting, but Jack's doubts remained. One afternoon, while the team was excavating near a set of ancient tools, Sarah called out to Emma, her voice tinged with excitement. Dr. Lane, you need to see this. Emma rushed over to where Sarah was kneeling, her hand resting on the earth. She had uncovered what appeared to be a stone carving, a picture of a needle, much like the ones they had found. The carving showed a figure holding a needle in one hand and weaving thread through cloth in the other. It was a clear, unmistakable image of textile production. Emma's heart skipped a beat. This could be the proof we need. As Emma looked at the carving, a voice interrupted her thoughts. This could be a fake, Jack said, walking up behind her. We don't know for sure that this carving is from the same time period as the needles. It could have been made later by someone copying the original art. Emma's frustration bubbled to the surface. Jack, you're not seeing it. The evidence is right in front of us. These people, whoever they were, had an advanced understanding of textiles, and they used tools that were ahead of their time. This isn't just some modern hoax. Jack sighed, his arms crossed in front of his chest. I don't know, Emma. It just seems too convenient, too perfect. We're finding exactly what we want to find. Emma met his gaze, her eyes hardening with determination. Sometimes the truth is stranger than we expect. Jack, I'm not giving up on this. We're on the edge of something big. The debate between them grew heated over the next few days. Emma became more and more convinced that they were uncovering a lost civilization, one that had mastered textile production long before any known societies. But Jack remained skeptical, convinced that they needed more proof before drawing any conclusions. Despite their differences, both of them knew that they had uncovered something extraordinary, something that, if proven true, could change everything they knew about human history. The past was revealing itself piece by piece, but the question was, could they trust what they were seeing? The mysteries of the needles, the carvings, and the paintings were beginning to connect, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that there was even more to uncover, and she wasn't about to let skepticism stand in her way. The sun was setting over the Wyoming plains, casting long shadows over the campsite. Emma stood on a high ridge, looking out across the horizon, her mind racing. The discovery of the needles and the carvings had opened a door, but it was the deep, uncharted caves, the ones they had yet to explore, that held the true mystery. If they could find a way into those caves, they might uncover the final pieces of the puzzle. The air was thick with anticipation as Emma, Jack, and the rest of the team prepared for the expedition. The caves, hidden deep within a series of cliffs, were rumored to contain the remnants of the civilization that had once thrived in the area. For weeks, they had studied maps, consulted experts, and gathered equipment. Now, it was time to take the next step. "Are you ready for this?" Jack asked, adjusting the straps on his backpack as he approached Emma. She nodded, her face determined. "This is it, Jack. The caves are the key. We can't afford to turn back now." With that, the team set out on their journey. The trek to the cave entrance was treacherous, the ground uneven and scattered with jagged rocks. The path was steep, and the air was thin at higher elevations. As they moved deeper into the foothills, the wind grew colder, whipping through their clothes and stinging their faces. But despite the discomfort, Emma felt a sense of excitement, the thrill of adventure pulsing through her veins. By the time they reached the entrance, night had fully fallen. The cave's mouth was dark and ominous, like the mouth of some ancient beast. A thin trickle of water ran down the sides of the cave, and the air was damp and heavy with the smell of earth. It was quiet, too quiet. "Let's stay close," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. The team huddled together, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. As they began their descent, the temperature dropped even further. The tunnel was narrow at first, the walls pressing in on them. The light from their torches flickered and danced across the rough, uneven surfaces. Strange markings, lines, circles, and patterns covered the walls, some faint, others clear and vibrant. They appeared to be guiding the team deeper into the cave, as though the ancient people who had once lived here had left behind a map. "Look at these," Sarah said, pointing to a series of symbols etched into the stone. "They almost look like a path." Emma stepped forward, her flashlight casting a beam over the markings. The symbols were unlike anything she had seen before, complex and yet deliberate. It seemed as though the figures in the cave were trying to lead them somewhere. "They might be guiding us," Emma said softly, her voice filled with awe. "This is incredible. We might be on the right track." As they descended further into the cave, the passage widened, and the walls grew taller, their smooth surfaces glistening with moisture. Every now and then, they had to crawl or squeeze through narrow cracks, but Emma's determination kept her going. She could almost feel the presence of the ancient people who had lived here, those who had used the needles, woven the fabrics, and created the mysterious symbols. Hours passed, and the deeper they went, the more they felt the weight of the cave's history pressing down on them. But it was when they reached a massive underground chamber that the true scale of the civilization's achievements became clear. The chamber was vast, stretching out in every direction. Stalactites hung from the ceiling, and the floor was covered in layers of ancient debris. As they stepped inside, the beam of Emma's flashlight illuminated something that took her breath away. Remnants of woven cloth, fragments of what looked like tools, and, most striking of all, pieces of finely crafted needles, identical to the ones they had found in the excavation site. "This is it," Emma breathed, her voice barely audible. "This is where it all began." The team spread out, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. They discovered more needles, some broken, some intact, but all showing signs of intricate craftsmanship. The fabric fragments were like nothing they had ever seen, woven with an astonishing level of detail, each thread seeming to tell a story of the people who had lived here. Jack was the first to speak, his voice low with disbelief. "This place, this is like a workshop, a textile workshop. These people, whoever they were, they had an advanced understanding of weaving. And these tools, they were used for something much more sophisticated than we ever imagined." Emma nodded, her heart racing with excitement. Exactly. They were creating textiles, something that should have been far beyond their time. As they explored further, the team uncovered more artifacts, stone tools used for shaping fibers, fragments of pottery decorated with intricate patterns, and even remains of a rudimentary loom. But there was something else, something that Emma couldn't quite explain. Amidst the clutter of objects, she found a series of carefully arranged stones, forming what appeared to be a ritualistic pattern on the floor. The stones were arranged in a perfect circle, and at the center there was a single intact needle. "Look at this," Emma said, kneeling down beside the formation. "This isn't just a storage area. This might have been a sacred space for the people who lived here." Jack crouched beside her, studying the arrangement. "It could be. The needle at the center. It's like it was placed there for a reason." The discovery left Emma with more questions than answers. Why had these people, so advanced in their knowledge of textiles, created this hidden underground world? What was the significance of the needles, and why had they been preserved in such an elaborate way? As the team gathered their findings and prepared to leave the chamber, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface. The cave had revealed a glimpse into the past, a glimpse of a civilization that had flourished long before recorded history. But there was still so much more to uncover. The expedition had given them valuable insights, but it had also deepened the mystery. Emma knew that the answers they were seeking lay within the very walls of the cave, answers that would change the course of history forever. The days in the cave blurred together as Emma and her team continued their exploration. Each discovery, each piece of evidence, seemed to draw them deeper into the mystery of the lost civilization. But nothing could have prepared Emma for what she found in the hidden room. It was a small, narrow passageway off to the side of the main chamber. The entrance was almost entirely covered by a dense wall of rock and debris. It wasn't until Emma and Jack had cleared away some of the rubble that they realized the passageway led to a room unlike anything they had encountered so far. The walls of this chamber were adorned with intricate tapestries, woven fabrics, glistening faintly in the light of their torches. "Emma, you've got to see this," Jack called out, his voice tinged with wonder. She hurried toward him, her pulse quickening as she entered the room. The tapestries were stunning, their colors faded but still vibrant in places. They depicted scenes that were both beautiful and unsettling. The figures were unlike any Emma had seen in the rest of the cave paintings. Humanoid shapes surrounded by strange symbols, figures in motion, and patterns that seemed to twist and loop in ways that defied logic. There was something hypnotic about the designs, something that made her heart race. But as Emma examined the tapestries more closely, something caught her eye, a symbol that appeared again and again, a needle woven into the fabric. It was surrounded by a series of interlocking circles, each one filled with symbols that seemed to represent time itself, sunrise, moon phases, and a spiral pattern that seemed to stretch out infinitely. "Jack, look at this," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "These symbols, they're not just decorative. They tell a story, about time, maybe even time travel." Jack furrowed his brow, stepping closer to examine the tapestry. "What do you mean, time travel? These are just symbols, Emma. Could be something to do with their belief system, their rituals." But Emma wasn't convinced. The more she looked at the intricate patterns, the more they seemed to tell a different story, a story of movement through time, of knowledge that should have been impossible for these ancient people to have. The symbols depicted figures passing through what appeared to be gateways, moving from one time to another, from one reality to the next. I think these people had knowledge beyond their time, Emma said, her voice trembling with excitement. This tapestry isn't just a record of history. It's a map of something far bigger, a map of time itself. Jack stepped back, his skepticism evident. Emma, you're saying that these people, who lived thousands of years ago, had knowledge of time travel? How is that even possible? This isn't science fiction. Emma didn't answer right away. Her mind was spinning, trying to piece together the puzzle. She ran her fingers over the fabric, feeling the weight of the symbols beneath her touch. There was no doubt in her mind the civilization that had created these textiles had a deep understanding of something far more profound than any ancient society had a right to know. I don't know how they did it, Emma admitted, her voice soft. But I know what I'm seeing. These symbols, they're not just a record of the past. They're a message, a warning perhaps. The room felt suddenly colder, the air thick with a sense of mystery. Emma stepped back, her eyes fixed on the woven fabric. Her thoughts raced, torn between awe and disbelief. Could it be possible? Could this ancient civilization have known something about time that modern science still didn't understand? The next few days were filled with intense discussions and painstaking examination of the tapestries. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something truly extraordinary. But Jack remained unconvinced, his skepticism growing as the days passed. "This is all too much, Emma," he said one evening as they sat around the campfire. "These tapestries, these needles, they don't prove anything. They're interesting, sure, but the idea that these people had knowledge of time travel, it's just too far-fetched." Emma looked at him, her eyes burning with determination. "Jack, I know it's hard to believe, but look at the evidence. We've found tools, textiles, and symbols, all pointing in the same direction. They had an understanding of time, a knowledge that shouldn't have been possible for their era. This isn't a coincidence." Jack sighed, staring into the fire. "I know you believe it, Emma, but the world won't. If we reveal this to the public, they'll laugh us out of the scientific community. There's no way they'll accept that these people had knowledge of something as complex as time travel." Emma's heart sank as she heard the truth in Jack's words. The ethical dilemma was impossible to ignore. If they revealed their findings, they risked being ridiculed. They could lose their credibility, their funding, even their careers. But if they kept it a secret, they would be depriving the world of a discovery that could reshape everything humanity knew about history, science, and the very fabric of time itself. "I don't know what to do, Jack," Emma admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "This discovery, these people, what they knew, it could change everything. But are we ready to face the consequences?" Jack was silent for a long time, his face shadowed in the firelight. "I don't know either, but we can't make this decision alone. We need to be sure, Emma. We need more evidence, and we need to be ready for the consequences, whatever they may be." Emma nodded slowly, her mind clouded with uncertainty. She had always been driven by the pursuit of knowledge, by the desire to uncover the truth. But now, the truth seemed to carry a heavy burden. What was the right thing to do? Should she share this discovery with the world, knowing the risks? Or should she protect the research, hiding it from the public to ensure its preservation? The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her shoulders. The future of their work, of their careers, and perhaps even the understanding of human history itself hung in the balance. Emma gazed into the flickering flames, lost in thought. She had always believed that truth, no matter how difficult or controversial, should be shared with the world. But this discovery was different. It wasn't just a breakthrough in archaeology. It was a challenge to everything humanity thought it knew about time and history. And as she sat there, staring into the fire, she couldn't help but wonder, was the world ready for the truth? Or was it a truth too dangerous to reveal? The decision had been made. After days of debating, sleepless nights spent pacing the cave's damp floors, and the weight of the world pressing down on their shoulders, Emma and Jack had finally come to a conclusion. They would share their findings. The tapestries, the needles, the mysterious symbols. They could no longer be hidden. The world deserved to know the truth. What if this discovery was not just a relic of the past, but a key to understanding something far greater? It had taken a great deal of courage for Emma to stand before her team and announce their decision. Jack had remained skeptical, but his trust in her was clear, even if he couldn't entirely embrace the full scope of the discovery. "We're opening a door," he'd said, "and I'm not sure what's on the other side." But Emma knew. She had felt it the moment she laid her eyes on the tapestries. The realization that they were not just uncovering history, but rewriting it. The announcement was made a week later. The discovery was presented to the scientific community, and news outlets around the world picked up the story. Emma and Jack were thrust into the limelight, their faces on television screens and in the papers. At first, there was disbelief. The idea that ancient civilizations had knowledge of time travel was met with ridicule, skepticism, and even hostility. The past can't change the present, some said. These findings are just another example of wild, unproven theories. But as the days passed, something unexpected began to happen. Scholars, historians, and even curious minds from across the globe began to converge on the site. The tapestries were studied under the brightest lights of modern science, and the symbols were analyzed by teams of linguists, archaeologists, and physicists. The more they examined the findings, the more they realized that Emma and Jack's discovery could not be dismissed as mere fantasy. The realization slowly began to spread. Perhaps these ancient people had been more advanced than anyone had ever imagined. The civilization that had once thrived in the caves had, indeed, possessed knowledge beyond their time, knowledge that challenged the very way humans understood time, space, and history. But that wasn't the only change. The discovery sparked something bigger, a global movement to preserve and study the lost technologies and knowledge of the past. Ancient artifacts, once relegated to dusty museum shelves, were now viewed as treasure troves of insight. In every corner of the world, people began to reconsider their view of history, acknowledging the possibility that the past had been far richer and more complex than they'd ever realized. The consequences were far greater than Emma had ever expected. New excavation teams were sent out, exploring other caves and ruins with renewed vigor. Historical societies began sponsoring research into lost civilizations, hoping to uncover other pieces of the puzzle. The world had become obsessed with the idea that ancient cultures held secrets they had yet to unlock. But Emma wasn't sure how she felt about it. She had expected excitement, but not the tidal wave of global attention that had come with it. As the days passed, she began to see that this discovery was not just about uncovering a long-forgotten civilization. It was about the way humanity viewed itself. The artifacts, the textiles, the knowledge, they were all fragments of a much larger story, a story that tied the ancient past to the present in ways that no one could have imagined. The discoveries had altered not only the academic world, but the public's perception of time itself. Suddenly, the past didn't seem so distant, and the future didn't feel so unreachable. Emma walked alone one evening through the ruins of the excavation site, her thoughts drifting like the wind that whistled through the stones. The once quiet plains of Wyoming now felt alive with the energy of discovery. Her reflection seemed to echo in the empty spaces around her. How had she never seen it before? The lines between past and present, between time and progress, had always been blurred. The people who had lived in these caves had created something beautiful, something profound, a legacy that reached across centuries. The question of what if, that had once plagued her thoughts, now seemed irrelevant. The past wasn't just a collection of facts and artifacts. It was a living, breathing part of the present, a fabric woven into the world she knew today. Back at the lab, Emma sat in front of her computer, reviewing the latest findings. Her reflection stared back at her from the screen, but it was no longer just her own. She thought about the tapestry she had found, the one that depicted figures moving through time, the one with the interlocking circles that seemed to spiral into infinity. It was a symbol of connection, of continuity. The stitches of the past weren't just marks on fabric. They were threads binding human progress together. And maybe, just maybe, they had been telling humanity all along that the future was never separate from the past. Her eyes scanned the lines of text on the screen. The study of these ancient people's knowledge had already begun to reshape not just the academic world but society at large. Museums across the world had started to re-examine their collections, no longer seeing these objects as relics of a forgotten age, but as part of an ongoing human story. Scholars were now suggesting that the search for lost knowledge wasn't just about digging into the past. It was about reconnecting with forgotten ideas and wisdom. Emma smiled to herself as she hit save on her latest paper. She had always known that understanding the past was key to shaping the future. But now she saw it more clearly than ever. The discoveries she had made in the caves, the secrets she had uncovered, had turned her view of human progress upside down. What she had thought were merely traces of a vanished civilization were now pieces of a greater mosaic, a reminder that the lessons of the past were never truly gone. They were still here, stitched into the fabric of every day. As she sat back in her chair, Emma reflected on how far they had come. They had started with a simple discovery, a set of strange needles, and ended with the uncovering of a legacy that had the power to transform the way humanity viewed its own history. The past, it seemed, had always been waiting for its moment to be rediscovered, and now it had woven itself into the present, leaving behind a thread of knowledge that would continue to unravel for generations to come. The fabric of time, stitched together by the ingenuity of those who had come before, was more connected than ever before.